Hey, it's Clay, and I want to talk about a tried and true learning strategy that really is a powerful way to learn how to day trade stocks. And first off, I'm not saying that you as a beginner day trader, you as somebody that's just getting started in the stock market, is wrong for the way that you're thinking, but I would encourage you to think a little bit deeper about what you're actually implying and what, quite frankly, you're putting yourself at risk of. Whereas on the flip side, if you use this learning strategy that I'm going to talk about here, you're ultimately going to give yourself the maximum amount of confidence. And that's what trading is all about. If you're not confident, then you can't do anything else. You're not going to be consistent. You're not going to make money. Now, of course, you can just randomly make money, but consistently over time, you're just not going to be able to operate with any sort of legitimate strategy if you don't have the confidence in the first place. So at the basic, at the primitive level, that's what learning's all about. That's what a learning strategy should take you to, is developing and having confidence in not only your ability as a trader, but think about it. What is going to give you confidence in your ability as a trader? Well, knowing that what you learned is actually what you should be learning. Learning what actually works, which brings about what we have on the screen here, right? So, I mean, at the core, what you want to do is, well, you want to learn something that is valid, right? In other words, you want to learn something, well, it works. And then the key part here is that, well, over here, whatever you learned is still valid. Or in other words, it still works, right? That's what you're ultimately after. That's what's going to bring about confidence. Learning something and knowing that what you learned works. Well, but then the other part is, well, I want to make sure that it still works later on. So the big question here depends on, and where the confidence is actually being developed is in this area right here, the arrow. Meaning, how long is this separation? How long is the actual arrow in terms of, well, time, right? So time is going to be a huge indicator in terms of whether or not true confidence is being built. What do I mean? Well, look at it like this. Let's say you go out there and you're like, I want a class, I want videos, I want all these bits of education that are up to date. I want to know what is up to date. And again, you're not wrong. In fact, I would say that that's quite logical. Yeah, you want to learn something. You want to make sure that what you're learning is up to date. So just for example's sake, I want a course. I want some sort of class. I want to make sure that that course is quote unquote up to date. So yeah, what you're looking at, that very well may work. So you're finding something, you're trading, and it does work. But because it's up to date, well, what happens if this arrow here is 1 year? What happens if that arrow is maybe just 6 months? So what you're learning, yeah, it's worked for a year. It's worked for 6 months, which brings up a very valid chain of logic of, yeah, okay, but what happens if all of a sudden, yeah, it's worked for the past year, but what happens if I do this course or I do this class, but then it stops working a month from now? I mean, yeah, it's up to date. It's worked, but it's only worked for a very small amount of time. And, if it's going to stop working and I'm, learning about whatever this is somewhere right around here or right there, where all of a sudden, right there, let's say it doesn't work anymore. So it's not valid. Well, you're going to have a very limited, you're going to be wasting your time. You're going to be, and if you, invest money to do the class or the course, you're going to be wasting your money. You learn something that all of a sudden went out of date. The strategy, the tools, whatever you were learning went out of date. And I get it makes it, Clay, that happens because the market's always changing. The market, there's always different things going on. There's different events. Right now you have coronavirus. Who would have seen this coming? So the markets are always changing. There's always different dynamics, which is true. But what happens if I could tell you this? What happens if I could say that this arrow here didn't represent a year, didn't represent 6 months, didn't represent 10 years. But what happens if this represented 300 years? So in other words, what you're learning, what you would be learning is valid and it works. And then 300 years later, it's valid and it still works. What would that do for your confidence level? What would that do? For me, at least, it was like, wow, I can be very confident in what I'm learning actually works. And more than that, is going to continue to work. If this thing has worked for 300 years and it hasn't changed, there's been nothing that's all of a sudden made it not work, and it's been 300 years, I suppose there's no such thing as a guarantee. But speaking from a probabilistic standpoint, it's probably going to continue to work if it's worked for 300 years and still works right now. Again, no guarantees, but I think that's a very logical and rational statement to be making and a thought process to have. And that is where you need to be focused on looking and being part of situations where you can have an example thrown at you. And the example, you can say, wow, that example was from quite a while ago. But then still see those very same examples play out today. And when I say today, I mean at whatever time in your journey. I mean, think about it. If you can look at an example and say, oh, look at that. That was 10 years ago. Oh, wow. I'm seeing that exact same thing occurring right now, present day. And whatever your present day is, doesn't matter. But present day, oh, wow. And it worked again. Wow, that's pretty cool. That's actually something I can have confidence in. So let me give you a little bit more backbone, a little bit more insight into what I'm actually talking about here. So here we are looking at a technical chart, and if depending on how much of a beginner you are, depending on how new you are to the market, this is what's known as a technical chart. And if you are going to be any sort of day trader, swing trader, investor, I'm not saying technical charts are the be-all, end-all. I'm not saying they're the holy grail, but they are definitely, I mean, if you've ever seen any sort of Hollywood movie or TV show, usually you'll see things like this in the background. So they're definitely a tool that needs to be in your tool belt. They're something that you need to understand how to use properly so that you can build a strategy based on, whatever your time schedule is, right? If you have a full-time job, then you're gonna need a little bit different strategy using the tools of a technical chart than somebody that's, has all day long to sit in front of their computer. Both are possible. Both you can make money as a trader. My point here is both traders, both situations are using the same tool. That tool being technical analysis, the use of a technical chart, which you see on the screen, but they're just using it in a different way. But let's go through this, and I realize this may sound, you'll just have to take my word for it, but if you don't want to trust me, that's fine. Do a little bit of research, run a Google search here, and you'll see plenty of examples, and it'll actually prove the point that I'm talking about. So right here, now if you have some experience, my question to you real quick would be, do you see any sort of technical pattern that has taken place? So I'll give you a second if you want to pause the video and look at it. All right, if you pause the video, welcome back. If you didn't pause the video, it was probably a little awkward when I was sitting there. But anyways, if you're saying, well, Clay, I see a couple different patterns. I mean, you could say it either way, but I see this area right here, and then I drew a trend line right here, and that would be known as a symmetrical triangle. That could be known as a wedge, right? But there's a pattern where the price is decreasing, but at the same time, the price is also increasing. Maybe somebody said, well, Clay, but I drew that in there. So what I saw here was a bull flag, a bull pennant. Point here being, all those technical patterns, you don't want to get too hung up on what the name is. You just want to get hung on mainly on the psychology that's being told to us. And the psychology here is that there is some downwards pressure as the price goes down, but on the flip side, there is some upwards pressure. Now, if you have even just a very basic understanding of charts, I'm not trying to insult your intelligence, but I'm sure you're saying, well, yes, Clay, I know how to draw trend lines. I see these trend lines, and I see how these trend lines make, a wedge pattern, a symmetrical triangle, whatever you want to call it. So the question just becomes, okay, if you want to go long, where would you want to go long at? And you would say, well, Clay, because you have that trend line, and assuming you want to play some sort of breakout, well, as a breakout trader, you would want to see the price break up through that trend line, and then you would want to go long. Again, I'm not trying to insult your intelligence, but that's just a very basic premise of how to play a breakout. Identify a pattern, and not to mention what sort of trend is this pattern in. If you're saying, well, Clay, look at all these higher lows. This is very clearly an overall uptrend. I would agree. That is an uptrend. And this uptrend, you have a pattern that's occurring in an overall uptrend. So yeah, wanting to go long, wanting to buy a breakout in something that's uptrending, that is a more than valid, that is a more than rational strategy to be using. Now, it's not guaranteed to use, but it's certainly not random, right? And then you can see here that ultimately price makes a move up, and I mean, there it goes. So you can see right there is a pattern that we had talked about. There was the breakout of the pattern right here, and then from there, up it goes. Now, here's a little twist here. What I'm going to do here, and keep an eye on it, and I was sneaky, I hit it, but I want you to look down there as I bring this up. Now, it's probably too hard to see right there. And I'll do another thing here so you can see it. But this all happened in 2007, over a decade ago. Over a decade ago. In fact, let me try to bring up this here. Let's see, where is that? Let's see. Data window, there we go. And also I'm going to make this just extra big so you can see. So right here, just so you can see the dates, that all this right there, 2007. Now this was Apple, and because of all the forward splits Apple has had, yeah. Basically back in 2007, you could have gotten Apple below $5. Now that's not quite true. Like I said, there's been a bunch of share structure changes, but that's besides the point. The point is, this is Apple from 2007, and everything we just talked about, an uptrend, the good old wedge pattern, symmetrical triangle, those things are still 100% valid today. Over a decade later, still totally valid. So does it matter, for example, and I would argue it's powerful. Let's say you were going through a class and the class was using this example here from 2007. Now, some people could say, that's worthless. That's outdated information. It's over a decade ago that all happened. Or you could look at it and say, well, wait a second, going back here. If what we just looked at, so in this situation, this was basically 13 years ago, right? And everything we talked about, uptrends, all that, still totally valid today. But that was 13 years ago. What would that do for your confidence as you learn? You would be like, wow, I get it. That seems bizarre. It seems odd that this person is, this example is from over a decade ago. But wow, what they talked about within my practice trading, I just saw that exact same thing play out. And it's been well over a decade later. That would be a big increase in confidence. And that's the learning strategy that you need to be after. You need to be after confidence. You need to be after situations where you can look and say, wow, that is old, but what is very old still works right now. Earlier, I had mentioned that 300 number, right? I said, what happens if this is 300 years? Well, what you just saw was the technical chart, and to get a little bit more specific, a candlestick chart. Candlesticks were invented by the Japanese over 300 years ago. Slightly over 300, but just keep the math easy. Let's call it 300 years ago. Now, they used it because they did it when it came to rice, trading rice and rice price and all that. So candlestick charts, candlestick technical analysis is something that's been around for 300 years and continues to work. And you don't have to take my word for it. Just go find a bunch of old examples of candlestick analysis and find examples from as long as you can find. And then go and match that up to things that you see playing out right now. You're going to see it all works. Why does it work though? Because technical analysis, the tool of charts, is based on human emotion. I don't care when you're looking at it. Humans are going to be always fearful, greedy, overexcited. They're going to panic. They're going to freak out. They're going to get way too irrational to the upside and to the downside. Humans, we have emotions, and those emotions have always been here, and they're always going to be here unless we all transform ourselves into, robots. But they're always there. And that is why a pattern is a pattern. Well, Clay, what about trading algorithms? What about AI? That still doesn't matter. What do I mean? Well, let's say that an AI is programmed, and I'm just totally making this up, but let's say that a price is at, $10, right? And let's say that for whatever reason, this algorithm, this AI is programmed to buy at $10. What is that going to show you as far as the technical chart is concerned? Well, the price is going to go down there, bounce. It's going to go down there and bounce. It's going to go down there and bounce. So yes, that is technically a robot that's trading. That's a computer program. But as far as the technical chart is concerned, what do we still have the ability to do? Well, we still have the ability that it keeps bouncing off $10. Now, do we necessarily know that it's an algorithm? No, you don't know what's causing that. But what you do know is it is bouncing off $10. So what happens if all of a sudden the person says, all right, well, click, that algorithm is off. That means what? Well, the price could come down here and it's just going to break down through $10, which from a trading standpoint, that right there is a very significant area. Something has changed. Now, we might not know what exactly has changed, but something has changed, and you could develop a trade idea from that point of view. So whether it's an algorithm or not, charts are a chart. Price action, volume, those sorts of patterns have been the case. They're tried and true. They are still the case right now, and I just showed it to you with Apple, going through some very, very basics where even if you're a beginner, I probably insulted your intelligence. Hey, here's an uptrend. Hey, here's a very basic symmetrical triangle. Yeah, from 2007, and it still worked to this day. So that is why I would say, you know what? Focus. Find yourself examples that are old. Now, this will sound like a total sales pitch, but it really isn't. By no means is my class, my course, the only one that operates like this. But given I've been around since 2013, guiding and helping traders, and my courses were built back then. So you're going to get that with my classes. You're going to go through my classes and you're going to see, wow, this example was from 2016, 2014, 2013. But really, it's kind of like a fine wine. The classes get better and better over time for this reason. Now, of course, I do offer live webinars every week. So there's a combination of seeing examples that are occurring right now and then examples that have occurred way back then. But I mean, that's a really good combination where I can sit here and say, hey, live webinar, let's look at this example. Oh, look, this example behaved in the same way as that example did 10 years ago. I mean, that is powerful. That is confidence inspiring. And that is how you're going to actually learn how to day trade stocks the right way, by being confident. And there's no better way to get confident by seeing and learning strategies that are still going to have, that have been working and will still work into the future. So hopefully this answers some questions. Hopefully this can maybe get your wheels turning a different way, because every now and then I see people, hey, Clay, do you update your classes? And now instead of just trying to explain all this and say, no, I don't want to update my classes for this reason. The older they get, the better it becomes, because now you can just get that much more confidence in seeing examples that happened so long ago, but yet still work out to this very day at whatever present time, you're going through. Like I said, in my situation, in my classes, but like I said, I'm not trying to say that my class, my course is the only one that operates in this function. I'm not trying to say that at all. But my core point here is that use this as a learning strategy. Find super old examples and then see if those super old examples still work in the present day, whenever that is for you. So hopefully this helps. A couple final things. If you enjoy videos like this and me kind of just trying to explain broader ideas that I think a lot of beginner day traders, fall into, then like I said, quick, easy way to communicate that to me, just hit that like button. Also, comments, questions, suggestions, please leave those down below. And then finally, check out the channel as a whole. And again, you could, along with the same principle, one playlist, for example, I do live trading. And live trading, that I think goes back to 2013 when I started the channel. So you can go back there and watch videos from 2013. And then you can watch videos from right now, present time, and you'll see the same exact patterns exist. And it's been going on 7 years plus, which is crazy. So there's just one little example, and I should say for free. Those videos are all for free. So if you want to apply this learning strategy in a free type of way, that's one thing you could do. Just go through that playlist, look at videos from a long time ago, and then look at videos now, and you'll see the same exact patterns and the same exact shapes take shape over and over again. And that was going on 7 years ago. So off the top of my head, that would be a great way to do that. But hopefully if you like what you see as a channel as a whole, hit that red subscribe button. I'd love to have you as a subscriber to the channel. But get out there, start to use this tried and true learning strategy. It will really make a big difference in your success and how you understand how to day trade stocks. First off, thanks so much for watching the entire video. Real quick, before you go, I want to invite you to a live webinar, web class, training, workshop, online event, whatever you want to call it, but it will be me live revealing to you what I've discovered that has allowed me to transform myself from being an employee to being my own boss, including how I had only one losing day out of 73 days in total. I'm going to cover 3 keys that have helped me unlock profitable consistency within the markets. The first key is super weird, but in a productive type of way. The second key is super awesome because it quite literally is wired into our DNA as humans, making it very easy to use. But in a cruel way, this becomes a pitfall for many traders. I'll explain it all though, including how to avoid the pitfall that it creates for some. And yeah, the third key, when you hear it, sounds way too good to be true, but it's not, and I'll show you how it all works. Then at the end, I open it up for a question and answer session that is, again, totally live. Even if you can't make the live session, please still sign up as it will be recorded, and you can go back and watch the replay that I will send you. Click the image on the screen or click the link down in the description box so you can get the date and time and claim your spot, which I should note is limited due to the fact that this truly is a live event. If you have any questions, let me know. If not, I'll be seeing you soon.